And good morning, welcome. It's a cold, breezy beast from the east, Isle of Man. And we've got Derek in Douglas. No, we haven't. We've got Derek in, where is it?
People's Republic of Ellswick in Greater Lancashire.
Live in Lancashire. And we got Michael in Douglas, haven't we? Just down there on the quay.
Good morning, Jed. Good to be here with you.
So, Michael, coastal overtopping today, does that affect you?
Well, it does in that we can't drive along the prom, so it's going to be another wet and cold and windy day.
So tell me about that. I think you picked up on social media. Has global warming got anything to do with what's happening down on the prom? Is it just going to be flooded out?
But let's hope not. There's a whole bunch of different factors at play there, and I suspect that the height of the water is obviously going to be one of them. And so, I was chatting with some people yesterday about whether such data exists over time. I think it'll be, useful for people to know, is the prom getting shut more often these days than it was 10 or 20 or 40 or 50 years ago? And, that sort of data would be useful, so that rather than people just saying, hey, look, I feel this or I feel that, it'll be useful to, look at what the actual facts are.
I think my own view, it's the cyclonic element, isn't it? It's high tides coinciding with these crazy east winds. And Derek, the climate over there, have you got any snow?
No, we're great here. We've had a dusting during the sort of problems that everybody else has had. But obviously that sort of proximity we have to the Lancashire coast tends to help things, and it is very, very flat here. Now we've been okay, really. We've been spared the worst of it, really. We had some quite bad rain the back end of last week, which was great because it meant I could test fly the repairs to my leaky chimney, which seemed to have been successful. But apart from that, no, it's been gin clear, really, really cold, but not unpleasant. It's actually been nice to stand outside and not be wetter than a haddock's bathing costume for once.
Well, I've been keeping an eye on social media accounts of yourselves, and there's been quite a bit of chatter about housing. And Michael, you've picked up on some data. You've been dipping into the history records. Is that right?
Sure, you make it sound like a dramatic thing, but the Isle of Man government publishes every property transaction on the Isle of Man is available on the internet. If you type in Isle of Man property transactions into Google, you'll get every record for the last 20 or so years, I guess. And you can see that I bought my little apartment here for. It's all up there on the internet. It's all public record there. I saw a property, one of the first home buyers properties. For those people who are not familiar, 10 years ago the government introduced a first home buyers scheme, and one of the rules was that these properties needed to own them for 10 years. And so now we're hitting up that timeline, and we can see what's happened over that time. There's a particular example here of a property in Convery Close in Onken, where this property, was purchased, and this is public. The government publishes this number. The government says that it was purchased and were for £146,000 in 2011, and the very same property is for sale today at £285,000. And throughout this time, wages have not doubled. Interest rates have remained at below, the official Bank of England interest rate has remained below 1% for the entire 10 years. So this is an example where we're comparing literally like for like. It is literally the same property. We do not have any meaningful variance in interest rates. We do not have any meaningful variance in wages, but we can see like for like, what's happening. And this is why it's so sad that so many young Manx families are increasingly realising, if they don't already know, that buying their own home is an out-of-reach fantasy.
Blimey, that is quite a striking graphic, and thanks for pulling it up. Now, Derek, you will have seen on the media this week about the population decreasing in size. I think you might have picked up on that as well. And property prices, it's a real challenge, isn't it, for young people?
It is, and I think it's actually sort of select committee public inquiry type stuff, really, because this needs to be drilled down. I lived on the island from 1998 through to last November, and there was talk about the aspiration to have 100,000 population. Things are clearly now going the other way, and both in terms of economic development and also sort of population which creates a critical mass and makes an island being worth open, if that makes sense. The decline is really quite a concerning thing, especially when there's no associated decline with the public sector and the size of that and so on. House prices are a part of it. I would concede that, but I don't think it is the total picture. I mean, my daughter's house hunting in London at the moment. You can imagine what that's like. Similar to budget to what we spent on this, but she certainly won't be getting 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 3 reception rooms, and extensive gardens. She'd be lucky if she gets 2 bedrooms and a Victorian semi or a terraced house somewhere. So I think we've got to compare like with like. The Isle of Man's a safe, nice place to live, where you at low risk of crime. So you've got to compare similar areas, and house prices are similar in those sorts of places. But I mean, things have gone up over here as well. We've bought at the top of the market, I think, to be honest with you, because of the way that there was that sort of post-lockdown euphoria. It just had exactly the same effect. Reading between the lines in terms of some of the comments that people have put on some of the social media chatter that we've sort of started there, opportunities seem to be in decline on the island for young people. People are coming back later in life. If they do get a decent position and it suits them at a particular time, then they will come back. We've had people like Gareth Davis, the eminent trauma medicine specialist who set up the HEMS unit at the Royal London Hospital, this, that, and the other, is now part of the A&E team at Douglas. Yeah, and Gareth is a St Ninians boy, so it's a great homecoming that skills to that level have come back, but it clearly suits him at this particular time in terms of where his career is and his home life and his family life and so on. So it is a bit of a niche market. When I moved to the Isle of Man, I mean, my passion for the place. I used to go on courses. I used to take brochures with me and say, look at this fantastic place I live. And I couldn't understand why everybody wasn't doing it, especially those with young families, because it was a magical place for us to bring up our kids. It was great. So there's something missing. There's an X factor which is missing, and we really need to understand that innately and either replace it or exploit the good things that we've got. We just don't seem to be doing it.
And cue Michael Josem. What's the solution?
Well, I don't know if the Isle of Man needs to particularly attract other people. I think the Isle of Man should be good people for the people of the Isle of Man first and foremost. And if other people want to share in the greatness of this place, then good on them. I think that fundamentally, if we have a good education system for our children, our good health system, especially for our senior citizens, and a good balance of the fundamental things that make life good, of healthy vocation, healthy faith, healthy families, healthy community service, sporting organisations, and so on. I don't think everything flows from that, and so I don't. I think that I guess one of my things that I disagree slightly with, and I think this is an unpopular or a minority view in the Isle of Man. I think we should be focused on the people rather than the corporations, and so I have no particular interest in attracting big corporations from elsewhere to the Isle of Man. I think that if we do good things for the individuals, that people will spread the word, and I think that's what the opportunity for the Isle of Man is, not necessarily to try and attract everyone for everyone, because I don't think that's worthwhile, but rather to be a shining beacon in stormy seas, and that when their storm is blowing elsewhere, let us be a shining, safe beacon here in the Irish Sea.
Well, it's certainly stormy in the housing market at the moment. 20% deposits, prices for basic properties 300 grand, it's putting immense pressure on young people to buy, especially when they're stuck in this rental cartel trap. So I'll give you, Michael, this. Retail, one could argue, is dead in the high street. We've had numerous stores closing, haven't we, from right down Strand Street and Castle Street. And these are for reasons, I think, beyond our shores. How are these properties going to be filled in the future? Are we going to have a return to retail as we've seen before? Or are we better now in saying, right, we'll just accept that the online shopping revolution is going to grow and grow. Why don't we turn these properties into townhouses, apartments, pubs and restaurants and have a more vibrant town centre?
Yeah, look, I think it's difficult in the sense that shops exist. The purpose that we have shops as a community is to serve the interests of the customers. And ultimately, if customers say, "Hey, we don't want shops," then you can't force the customers to shop there.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to retail transactions, it is really difficult for bricks and mortar retailers to compete with the convenience of getting on your phone or your computer or whatever, and going to Amazon.com and buying your your mobile phone or your teacup or whatever you're buying. And so I think that the hope for retail is to be about more than just a transaction and to be an experience. So many people will be familiar with Liverpool One across, and that Liverpool One is a really decent and world-leading effort to make retail shopping more than just a transaction, to make it an experience. And so I think that's why we see that much more of our high street here in Douglas, and probably the other towns as well on the Isle of Man, why much more of the shop fronts are services such as massage or beauty or hairdressing or coffees or restaurants and so on. And so our shop fronts are going to have to adapt to the needs of customers. That's why they're there. And it's tragic to see another few shops shut this week for the impact on the staff. Hopefully they can find a new job, and it's going to be difficult though.
I'll just throw one over to Derek. Like Michael mentioned about Liverpool One, but Derek, the harsh reality is when you walk down the high street of Preston or Bolton or maybe Blackpool, we're not seeing department stores from days gone by. We're seeing betting shops, coffee shops, charity shops, and boarded up windows. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Blackpool has been in monumental. Blackpool was a great shopping centre. Back in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up, you got the number 14 bus into town, and everybody was there. Hills department store. There was loads of shops. The nightlife was good. And working there as a cop in the 90s, and my last couple of years was spent on the licence unit, the pubs and clubs unit. The money that was being ploughed into by the majors, the big breweries and so on, was colossal. Now I drive through town and I avoid it whenever I possibly can, to be honest, because it's depressing. And the polish is gone. It really is bargain basement time. There are a few anomalies, like there's a Hilton by Hamptons has been built down South Shore. That seems to be getting a bit of a renaissance. It's quite a nice apartments being built and so on, but it is so incongruous because it's still an area of significant deprivation, lots of high incidences of houses of multiple occupation and so on. But you see this repeated, like you say, time and time again throughout the British Isles, and the Isle of Man isn't immune to that. For me, though, going back to what Michael was saying about the population side of things, I absolutely subscribe to what you say. Make it a quality environment for those that are there. The problem is that we have a government which just sort of runs on hubris and this sort of almost like world superpower attitude. No, just be good at what you are, being a small, safe island environment which lives within its means, and everybody would be happy with that. And if people then, if I don't know, Apple or Amazon decide, that'd be a really nice place to base an office. Business rates aren't too bad, and this, that, and the other. Let's go and create some jobs over there. Fantastic. But no, unfortunately, it's this build it and they will come attitude. But unfortunately, nobody's building anything. You know, you've got the big car park next to Barbary Coast. Where's the development with that? It's being a car park again. Surprise, surprise. The confidence isn't there, other than builders with land banks building houses which seem to get shoveled up despite the prices. Those are the only people that are really putting money into infrastructure, it's there's something far wrong. It really does need some scrutiny here and now, but we're not going to get it until after the next administration, are we? Because who'd want to be digging up the bones of what's actually wrong with the place prior to an election?
Michael, you live very close to that bus station site that's been talked about for years and years. It's pretty dead round there. I'm not even seeing young people going shopping. I don't know. I think habits have changed, and I don't think they'll go back. We've perhaps got to redesign Douglas Centre.
So chatting to various families, especially last summer when I was running for Tim, one of the issues is how we entertain and keep young people, amused, as it were, for lack of a better phrase. And what is interesting as a community is that rates of teen drinking has fallen, rates of teen pregnancy has fallen, but also there seems to be a group of people who are essentially bored, which has the risk of leading to other antisocial behaviour. And so kids these days are just not having sex. They're just not drinking, which is a bit of they're just too well behaved, right? And so we've got to create other opportunities for them to amuse themselves and to be occupied. And so I think the opportunity there is perhaps there's opportunities for coffees, coffee shops, and maybe there's an opportunity for them to get employment in a world of more service-based industries.
That's fine, but I don't think it's exclusive to the youngsters that they are bored. I've got to be honest with you. One of the things that influenced us moving off the island, as well as the draw of being closer to family, was things to do. And somebody put on a response to one of the tweets that we were doing the other day. There was unless you're into walking and mountain biking, your opportunities are fairly limited. Golf, that's actually quite well catered for. But it is down to that. Mountain biking and walking is about the sort of level of the entertainment that exists now. The nightlife, the big night out in Douglas is nowhere near as vibrant and exciting as it used to be, even if you're sort of middle-aged and so on. So that ability down to when all this nonsense has stopped outside the door, be able to jump in the car and go and visit Tatton Park or Chatsworth, or go and see the Silverstone Classic on the Friday.
Barnard Castle.
Barnard Castle. The list is endless. The Pleasure Beach. The list is endless. So that's one of the things as well that I think is driving people away in terms, and people want stimulating now. And it's like after the Second World War, people wanted stimulating. The pressures of the war have gone, and there's a whole new sort of enlightenment, and people want to do new things and be stimulated. Well, that's what we're competing with post lockdown. So how do we do that, or do we do what Michael sort of suggests, and I agree with him, just accept what we are good at: nice views, tranquility, safety, security, and actually running things reasonably well, although we could do better, and cut our cloth accordingly. I think that's probably a safer model than the aspirations that Alf and the gang have got for taking the place forward.
Well, we're going to get a budget next week that's going to be very generous, there's no doubt about that. We've got the election coming up in September, and there's no way they're going to say we haven't got any money in the coffers. But we had, Howard Quayle being touted as a future PM. He's done a better job than Boris Johnson. We're hearing about multi-thousands of enquiries of people coming to live to the island. So what's next? What happens if we get a surge of people who are going to find this island paradise? It could solve all our problems.
So I accept that there are some people who have Googled the Isle of Man, but let us not get ahead of ourselves. And I think that for you and I and many of the people watching this here at home, will recognise that the Isle of Man is a pretty decent place to live. But I think it is a tough sell for some people from elsewhere to pack up and move. One of the opportunities I think we have is that in a world where there are more people who are working remote, more people who are not forced to commute to a big office, I think there's an opportunity for the Isle of Man to really focus on people. And I guess, in response to Derek's comments that there's not much to do, if you're looking for something to do tomorrow morning, come and join me and many other volunteers at Solby Glen, where we're just going to plant trees in the ground. Or alternatively, tomorrow afternoon, come and play hockey with the local hockey club. Or, in the evening, Kirkbraden Church, we're running board game night. On Sunday morning, I personally am volunteering to referee some children's sport before going to lunch with, a faith-based group in the afternoon. And, I think that there are things to be doing here on the Isle of Man for those who want to get out and do it. There is a risk of people being, I think that's fundamentally why kids these days are not having as much sex, and they're not having as much drugs, and they're not consuming as much booze. And that is, a lot of people are stuck in their phone, and a lot of people are watching the Netflix or the Amazon Prime Time and whatnot. But for those people who want to get out and do stuff, I think the Isle of Man is a great and welcoming thing. And I think it comes down to having the institutions that do that. And the Isle of Man is relatively fortunate that, we have, the Woodland Trust, who have organised a tree planting tomorrow morning, 10:30, Solby Glen. Come on down. It's open to anyone. Just turn up, see the flag. I think that stuff is good fun.
It is good fun. You're right. And the thing is, as well, one of the other benefits it's got, it costs nothing. It doesn't cost anything to go and play hockey. It doesn't cost anything in real terms.
Yeah.
But I think, in terms of a consumer society where people do want to go and have experiences, whether it's jumping out of a plane or whatever, there is that real sort of limitation. And we certainly found that. I love cycling. I'll go out on the bike and so on, and the roads are certainly safe up north for doing that. But it's just that wider sort of access to the rest of the world, especially for young people. I think they need that. I mean, we used to say, Jed. You'll remember. You worked across like I did. It would have done a lot of our young coppers good to have 6 months working in Moss Side or somewhere like that, or in a city area, just to get a sense of perspective as to how good the place is. And Mike, you're from elsewhere, so you recognise that as well. But the other thing is as well, you're talking about the sort of coffee shop society, and the problem with that is it almost ends up like a Ponzi scheme, because I drink in your coffee shop, you drink in my car. I buy food in your patisserie, you drink in my coffee shop, and so on. And it just ends up, it's almost like all you're doing is money laundering effectively, because you're just moving the same money round, and it's not actually growing, if you like, the economy. This is a whole sort of paradox in terms of the need for that outward investment and outward trade, and it's really weird. It's a difficult time. It really is.
Okay, let's be bold though. There's a shortage of housing. There's a shortage of affordable housing. Why don't stick it all in the town centre? And those residents would furnish the little, patisseries and the coffee shops and maybe smaller retail units. Because when a kid, I think about my lad, he wants to buy some sports gear. He's straight online. He presses the button. It's done in seconds. And I think the evolution in how we shop has shaped the way ahead. So.
Okay. Well, you incentivise any of the landlords in Douglas to do that. Tell me how you do that without government handing them a chuckload of money, because that's the only reason they'll do it.
Well, they're not going to get any rents, are they? You look at those big shops. I think, was it Topshop? Is that one of them? Wallace. Yeah. What businesses are going to replace those? So they're going to be vacant and empty and not scooping any rents. But there you go. I think we'll just move on to the next topic, which came up, caught my eye, and it is about the vaccination centre. Michael, you're getting one in Douglas in the former supermarket. Talking about a change of use. Have you seen it? It looks 5-star.
So just to clarify, I'm not getting a vaccination, but rather Douglas is getting a vaccination hub. And so it looks like the government has spent a great chunk of money. But on the other hand, I think there are some great tradesmen and tradeswomen working in Douglas, and they look to have done a sterling job. It does look like the Isle of Man government has spent has not spared a penny in doing it. And I don't understand it. I'm no designer of vaccination halls. I do not claim to be any expert on this, and I think, as we've said on previous weeks, it is just something the government needs to explain. Why they've got all this complicated building things when across in the UK and elsewhere, vaccination halls are designed to be very open and very airy, because we know that this virus transmits primarily in the air through some combination of aerosols and airborne transmission, and so in that context, it seems to make sense to me, as a layperson, you want to have maximum ventilation. You want to basically replace the air as quickly as possible, because God forbid, and touch wood, we don't want the virus to be transmitted within that space. So, well, I don't understand it, but maybe the experts do.
I've just put the images on the screen, and you won't be able to see them, but Derek, I'm sure you can visualise that I've put a UK vaccination hub, which is curtains in a school hall. Compared to the Isle of Man, it's not a COVID crisis, it's a bleeding coving crisis. It's it's a beautiful piece of architecture.
It is scandalous. I mean, my question with these sort of things, my default position is, what would the army do? Well, they'd whiz in and maybe put a few plywood partitions up, or maybe put some curtains up for this, that, and the other, and then they'd get on with it, which is pretty much what's happening in centres in the UK. I mean, the Isle of Man Street was converted into a Nightingale hospital at maybe several £1 million or more expense. It is absolutely scandalous. That is money that could be going into helping poverty, helping vulnerable people, but no, it's another SPAF central, and there's just no accountability. Who signed that budget off? Who said it's okay to spend that sort of money on a temporary facility? Unless, of course, they know something that we don't, and it's going to be there, for in perpetuity, because we all need a job every 6 months or whatever. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it's got to stop, because at some point there will be a tipping point with the Manx budget where there just isn't enough income to support the expenditure. So, if anything can come out of the budget, just a little bit of austerity might save your arse and get you in next year. But it's, the thing is, mate, nobody cares on the island. Nobody's bothered, because it doesn't. There's still, going back to what I was saying, there's low taxation. People don't get pinched half as hard as they think they're getting pinched compared to the situation in the UK. The majority lead very comfortable existences, and they're happy with that. So they will, there'll be a bit of granny farming going on. Everybody will vote for that nice Mr. Whoever again, and nothing will change. So that's the reality of what you've got to look forward to in September, I'm afraid.
Well, the forecast is for Tuesday, and I'll lay it on the line. I think we'll get some. You're not going to believe this, folks. The economy is performing ever so well. We're going to have X amount here, X amount there, and we're going to give you a little bit more in your pocket. And maybe we'll talk about it next week, Michael. Am I being too cynical?
Well, let's hope so. I think there are a lot of people who've been harmed by the lockdowns, by the coronavirus. There are a lot of people doing it tough, and I guess, let's be honest, the Isle of Man government budget is primarily a financial thing, so let's just talk about the finances. Let us hope that the government does not slug Manx taxpayers with another, COVID tax. I think that would be, there are a lot of people who are doing it tough. what we need now is exactly what you describe. I disagree slightly with Derek. I don't think now is the time for austerity. I think now is the time to let Manx businesses and let Manx workers recover from the stresses of the last year, because they've had it tough. The public sector is as far as I can tell, not a single government worker has had a pay cut.
That's what I mean.
Right, and so in that sense, there are a lot of Manx workers who are doing it tough. And let us look out for them. And even those people living on fixed incomes, they're, with the cost of living, it's certainly not cheap to buy your milk or your petrol or your other bits and pieces that you need for life. And so let's hope there's no new secret taxes that are being introduced by the government.
Well, fingers crossed. Well, boys, we're coming up to 30 minutes. Anything else on the agenda? Anything we need to get off our chest, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd sort of say is that there's an awful lot of sort of clouds gathering across the UK and the island at the moment, and a lot of doom and despair, and it's sort of looking through that for the bright opportunities and trying to find them. But that really needs thought leadership from governments in terms of some aspirational thinking, not pie in the sky stuff, but aspirational thinking in terms of, listen, there's a real opportunity we can exploit here. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? It's not so long ago we had 50 million quid to entice businesses over here, but that sort of partnership approach where, we'll put skin in the game, you put skin in the game, and let's go forward together with this. It might just be the little sort of shaft of light that's really needed in quite dark times. I hope everything does pan out all right. I tend to be a bit of a pessimist because nothing ends up being a disappointment then. But there's a lot of work to be done, and rather than sort of just putting grandiose projects out there all the time, bridges over Glen William, this, that, and the other, let's see some meaningful expenditure rather than just stuff that's nice to do. There's a lot of need to do prior to that.
Michael, I'll give you just a minute if you can. You've got 50 million to spend. You're in charge of the Treasury. Any ideas? Any thoughts? What would you do?
I don't think it's about government spending more money. I think that the things that make life on the Isle of Man good in the long term will be if fundamentally our people are more productive and are able to earn higher wages in the long term. And they will do that if we have a strong education system and an effective education system that gives young people the skills to be productive in the future. Second of all, if we have a strong and reliable and universally accessible health service, so that people, when they get sick, they can get fixed up quickly and cheaply and safely. And third of all is if we can do things to ease the squeeze on the cost of living. And so that is things like making houses more accessible, as we spoke about at the beginning here. And so I think that although there are stormy seas in the short term, I think that's right, because I think that in the long term, we will get the education right for our young people. We will get the health service right, especially for our older people, and we will ease the squeeze on the cost of living in the long term. And so those things will be increasingly driven. Where people can work remote, we don't no longer need to, give a chunk of money to attract some sort of big business or some bank from elsewhere or whatever it is. But rather, if we have that infrastructure of the cost of living, the infrastructure for the health, and the infrastructure for the education, then the people of the Isle of Man will be globally competitive and relatively prosperous.
Well, my take is we can turn it round, the high net worth structure, ditch that. We could be attracting people from all around the world to come and live here, but they need to be charged for that privilege, so they're not getting a free ride on our NHS and our public services and what have you. Let's turn it into a destination that is irresistible for people to come here. And I think that is a message that we should send it round, like a giant gated community. So that is my take. That is my take on it. Attracting high net worths and these trickle down economics that is not proven at all. Not proven at all. We've got one guy on the Isle of Man who owns over 300 houses, 300 rental properties. and he's getting taxed the equivalent of probably half a pence that we do. It's absolutely bonkers, but that's my take on it, Michael. I can see by you're really impressed with that one, but for the weekend we'll just say goodbye. What are your plans, Derek? You've had a sausage roll already. What's on?
Oh, crikey, I've got lots on. I've got scaffolding up outside my garage, a new roof to go on there, all sorts of stuff. I'll find plenty to amuse myself with, and next week is plumbing and carpet fitting and all sorts of stuff. So finding time to read the paper is my primary objective this weekend.
Lovely. And Michael, tell me about the tree planting tomorrow, please. Where is it?
Tomorrow morning, Solby Glen, 10:30 a.m. on Saturday, the 13th of February. And then the following day, Sunday, the 14th of February, is, of course, St. Valentine's Day. I don't want to put any ideas into anyone's minds. However, I am available Sunday night. So, ladies of the Isle of Man, we'll see what happens.
Outrageous.
I hope you guys have a wonderful evening with your respective wives.
You could actually have a double, couldn't you? Because it could start tomorrow at the Sulby Glen, 10 o'clock. So is it the Sulby Glen pub or where we plant the trees?
Sulby Glen itself. So if you type in Isle of Man Woodland Trust, you can see the details on the Google or the Facebook or the Twitbook or whatever else. But
it's just a big cover for a speed dating opportunity, isn't it, Michael? Come on, it's fess up. Let's just be honest about this. Tree planting, my arse. I don't know.
Well, there you have it, folks. He's available. It could be a great weekend. Right, we'll say goodbye. We'll catch up next week. Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.